Hi, I'm Swank Ivy, and I'm an asexuality educator and awareness activist, and I'm here to teach you the basics of what asexuality is and why it's important. What is asexuality? Asexuality is a sexual orientation describing people who are not sexually attracted to anyone. That's it. So asexuals don't have sex? Behavior and orientation are two different things. Asexual is not a synonym for celibate or abstinent. Many asexual people don't have sex because they don't find people sexually attractive, but there are many other reasons to have sex, and people of any orientation may be having sex for those reasons. But what about romance? Good question. Even if a person doesn't experience sexual attraction, they may still have the capacity to experience romantic attraction. Just like anyone else, asexual people do sometimes choose romantic partners, and having sex in those relationships is not what makes them romantic. Some people desire interpersonal connection and partnership even without sexual attraction, and many asexual people do still desire physical and emotional intimacy. They may or may not like kissing and cuddling, and they may or may not feel sensual or aesthetic attraction, and many still want a life partner. What decisions they make regarding sex in those relationships is only up to the people involved. Types of romantic asexuals. Asexual people's romantic desires are sometimes dependent on gender or gender presentation, so labels exist for those just like they do for anyone else. If you're romantically attracted to cross-sex or cross-gender partners, you're hetero-romantic. If you're romantically attracted to same-sex or same-gender partners, you're homo-romantic. If you're romantically attracted to both your same sex or gender, and you're romantically attracted to another sex or gender, you're biromantic. If you're romantically attracted to multiple sexes or genders, but not all sexes and genders, you're polyromantic. And if you're romantically attracted to people regardless of sex or gender, you're panromantic. Keep in mind that people who are not asexual can also have these romantic orientations, and they're not necessarily tied to their sexual orientation. There are also people like me who are aromantic. I'm not romantically attracted to anyone, so I don't want a romantic partner. Some aromantic people still want a partner of some kind, just not in a romantic sense. Partners with deep emotional connections don't necessarily have to base their bond on sexual or romantic attraction. These partnerships may be intimate friendships, queer platonic partnerships, or any number of other close relationships with various benefits. What's important is that the people involved get to define what their bond is, and that it shouldn't be defined by traditional beliefs about what makes a relationship romantic or intimate or real. Can you be a little bit asexual or sort of romantic? Sexual interest and romanticism are on a continuum, so there are definitely gray areas. Some people identify as gray asexual or gray sexual, which usually means they very rarely experience sexual attraction and have a lot in common with asexual people when it comes to everyday life experiences. Some people identify as gray romantic, which usually means they very rarely experience romantic attraction and might feel aromantic most of the time. Some people identify as demisexual, which usually means they may be capable of sexual attraction towards certain people with whom they have developed an emotional bond, but never feel sexual attraction toward people they don't know. Some people identify as demi-romantic, which usually means they may start becoming romantically attracted to someone only after developing other emotional bonds with them. Please note that demisexuality and demi-romanticism aren't about willingness to have sex or willingness to be in a relationship. Some people misunderstand these orientations as if people identifying as demi must be taking a moral stance on sex or dating before being in love, but that's not the case at all. It's about actually not being able to feel attraction without emotional involvement, not necessarily love, which means a demi person will never have that attraction to a stranger. Just like anyone else, gray and demi people may or may not have sex or be in relationships without sexual or romantic attraction. Orientation is about attraction, not behavior. Asexuality, 20 questions. Do asexuals have a sex drive? Some do, some don't. It varies a lot, just like with everyone else. The only difference with asexual people is that they're not sexually attracted to anyone. They may or may not have a libido. Do asexuals masturbate? Some masturbate, some don't, just like with anyone else. They may or may not have accompanying fantasies, and they may just consider it a pleasurable experience without connecting it to sex. Are you sure it's not a hormonal problem? Asexuality is not a physical condition. Hormonal imbalances cause issues other than lack of sexual interest, but if a person does suspect that they may have a medical condition, they can get tested by a doctor. Lack of sexual attraction to other people is not an automatic sign of hormonal imbalance. Could asexuals have a psychological issue? A psychological condition called hypoactive sexual desire disorder does exist. One of the conditions for being diagnosed with HSDD is that the suffering person experiences distress over their disinterest. You also usually can't get a diagnosis of HSDD if you've had a lifelong experience of disinterest. If an asexual person wants to see a mental health professional to deal with any sex-related issues, that's completely up to them, but it shouldn't be treated as if it's something that the person needs to learn how to get over. Maybe asexual people are traumatized from abuse? I really recommend that you don't ever suggest this to an asexual person, because abuse experiences are personal, and they shouldn't be brought up outside of safe conversations that the possible victim has agreed to. But regardless of whether an asexual person has been abused in some way, you shouldn't assume that their orientation is an avoidant response. Asexuality is a lack of sexual attraction, not a fear response. Are asexual people just ugly, dateless losers? It doesn't matter if someone who's asexual is physically attractive. Their orientation should always be respected, not blamed on being ugly or unable to get a date. In any population, there's a spectrum of attractiveness. Asexual people aren't calling themselves asexual to cover for not being able to get dates, and most asexual people have the usual opportunities. Are asexual people just going to stay virgins forever? Not all asexual people hate sex or refuse to have sex. Some even like it, even without having sexual attraction to their partners. Most are indifferent or repulsed, but regardless of that, whether they have sex anyway is highly individual. Shouldn't they try sex with a talented partner before they write it off? Again, asexual people aren't about hating sex. They're just not attracted to other people sexually. That doesn't mean they couldn't like sex, but they need to be trusted as to whether they want to try it. They have to be in control of those experiences without other people pressuring them. If straight people can know that they won't like gay sex without trying it, then asexual people shouldn't be considered some kind of special class of people whose feelings can't be trusted and therefore should be harassed into inviting sexual experiences they don't want. Besides, you can't prove a negative. If we do try sex, and we're still not experiencing sexual attraction to potential partners, we just get told we did it wrong, or with the wrong gender, or with the wrong person, or ruined the whole experience by expecting to hate it. Some people won't stop pressuring us until we stop identifying as asexual, so we need to be the ones who are allowed to draw our boundaries as to what experiences we want to invite. Maybe they're just gay and they're confused. People who think they're straight can be gay and confused too, but the point is no orientation should be automatically questioned. Some people just need time to figure themselves out, and actually a lot of asexual people assume that they must be gay if they're not straight due to lack of education about our orientation even existing. Does it mean they might be gender confused? Gender and sexual orientation are not the same thing. You can be transgender and be asexual, but that doesn't mean you're confused. Same with genderqueer, agender, gender fluid, and everybody else who's non-binary. What if they're really young or really old? It doesn't matter how old someone is. Don't invalidate them. Straight 10-year-olds are allowed and sometimes even encouraged to pursue cross-gender crushes, but if a teenager comes out as asexual, they're immediately told they're not old enough to know how they feel, and if an older asexual person comes out, they're told that their orientation is actually a symptom of a waning sex drive. Yes, what stage of life you're at intersects with what you want, but don't look at somebody's time on the planet and use it to tell them that what they're feeling isn't real. But maybe they haven't met the right person yet. Sure, maybe. Just like any straight person may not have met the right gay partner to show them their real orientation. It's always true with human relationships that we might discover something new about ourselves at any time, But it's also true that you shouldn't use this fact to treat people like their orientation is temporary. Do asexual people look down on others for valuing sex? No, not as a group. Individual people of all different kinds of orientations have different feelings about sex, and they may try to control or limit other people's sex lives, but being asexual isn't a moral statement, and it doesn't mean we think we're above you, even if we're abstinent. We're not a religious group, and we're not an organization for social control. We're just not attracted to other people sexually. What if asexual people want kids? Then they can pursue procreation or parenting in all the same ways that are available to anyone else. Some asexual people want kids, and some don't, and they can pursue traditional childbirth, surrogacy, adoption, or all kinds of alternative fertilization methods. Plenty of asexual people want to be parents, and they're not necessarily opposed to having sex to get them, but if that's not an option, there are plenty of other avenues. Is asexuality part of the LGBTQ movement? Sometimes we are included in queer activism and invited into queer spaces. We are, after all, a sexual minority, even if we don't share some experiences with LGBT people, unless we are LGBT in addition to being asexual. It's up to individuals if they want to identify as queer or associate with the community, and it's up to individual people and individual communities as to whether they want to invite asexual people to join them and what services they'd like to provide. Can asexuals be poly or kinky? Sure. Just like with anyone else, sometimes an asexual person is comfortable in a poly relationship, especially since if the asexual person does not desire partnered sex, the other partners can satisfy their sexual desires with each other, and then still give everyone in the group the kind of intimacy that they want. And even some people who aren't asexual satisfy desires that are not related to sexual attraction to the partner through BDSM and kinky activities, so of course some asexual people may enjoy those practices. Will asexual people freak out if I talk about sex, or if they see it in a movie? It's unlikely asexual people need to be sheltered from sexual content in media or normal conversation. Feel free to ask if you're worried, but for the most part, most asexual people aren't any more ignorant about sex or any more sensitive to seeing it in media than the rest of the population. Why do asexual people feel the need to label themselves? Things that exist have words so we can talk about them. Most people in the world believe that asexuality isn't a real thing, and asexual people are hurt by that assumption. Not having words for our orientation means we can't find other people like ourselves, and we're more susceptible to being pressured into becoming what we're not. Even when labels aren't 100% accurate all the time, they let us have these conversations, and we need them. How common is asexuality? Current estimations suggest that about 1% of the population is asexual, based on a large survey from 2004. If 1% doesn't sound like very much, just remember that's over 3 million people just in the United States. You've probably met asexual people, or maybe you are one. But since most people are assumed straight if they're not gay, you probably didn't even know it. They probably don't even know it, because education about our orientation is not widespread yet. How can I be a good ally to the asexual community? If you'd like to help spread awareness about asexuality and be a good ally, keep the following things in mind. Listen and believe asexual people, and if they reveal their orientation to you, don't treat them like they have to prove or justify how they feel. Watch your blanket statements when discussing sexuality. It alienates and erases asexual people every time you say stuff like, everyone needs sex, or equates sexual attraction with being really alive or really human. If you're involved in sex education or research, make sure options exist for acknowledging asexuality and allowing asexual people to report their orientation. It's very common on surveys for asexual people to have to lie or choose no response or not telling if they're filling out their orientation. If you have a question, but the topic is possibly sensitive, ask if you can ask. Know where to find resources for more information. I'll include some links for you in the information box. I hope this video has been informative, and feel free to contact me if you have any questions or requests. Thanks very much for watching.